Hello everybody, welcome to another AP Human Geography presentation. I'll be teaching you guys today how to write essays for the AP Human Geography class. I am employed not only as a high school teacher here in Las Vegas, Nevada, but I am also employed by the College Board, and I have graded AP tests for the last 2 years. I've compiled 13 different skills that I think are really important for being an effective writer and for ultimately passing the AP test. So let's jump into these and make the magic happen. Here we go. So yes, writing is hard work. It's a challenge. Okay, so these are my sort of opening questions that I would do if this was a real deal class. So what did you think about the practice FRQ we already wrote? I expected some people probably had some challenges with it. I want people to rank their ability as a writer from 1 to 10. And I want you to know how long you have for the AP test, how many questions will you expect to see on the AP test. And of course, all the information I'm about to give here is information applying to the AP test as it is traditionally done. Last year we had this online thing. Maybe we'll have it again this year, who knows. But still, the advice in here will help you with a physical test or an online test either way. So, all right, let's do it. Skill number 1. Always, always, always start your essay responses by rephrasing the words in the question. It almost guarantees that you answer the question correctly, and in almost every case I can think of, it'll get you at least 1 point on the FRQ questions. So, for example, if an FRQ question was, identify which country is highlighted on the map, the way you respond to that in your written essay is, the country that is highlighted on the map is the United States of America. Okay, so that's exactly what I want to see on a FRQ essay. But now let's see if, students, this would be a kind of a back and forth thing if it was in the real classroom. I would ask, okay, what if the question was, identify which state is the largest? So you would respond to that with, the largest state in the United States of America is Alaska. Identify which state is the smallest. The smallest state in the United States is Rhode Island. So you have the full question with your answer. Don't just immediately jump to Alaska. Don't just write Rhode Island. Definitely make sure you have the whole phrasing in there, because I've seen multiple times where students read the question really quickly and they sort of answer it in the wrong way. And this strategy almost guarantees that you'll answer the question as the author intended. So make this happen, skill number 1. All right, skill number 2. This is the most important slide of this whole presentation. Know how much content you are expected to write for each question stem. What's pretty great about AP Human Geography is there are only 5 STEM vocabulary terms. Or STEM, I should say action words. Well, I think we just say STEM questions. But they are identify, define, describe, explain, and compare. You will only see these 5 words used as the start-off point for questions. So every single question you'll ever see in my class will have one of these 5 words to be sort of the action term in the answer. If you see a question that has the word identify in it, what am I expecting as an AP grader? I'm expecting 1 to 2 sentences, a simple enumeration of the facts and characteristics. So identify the country highlighted on the map. The country highlighted on the map was the United States of America, or is the United States of America. Either way is fine. And then when you go to define, define should be 1 sentence long, where you give meaning of whatever term that I'm asking you to define. And examples at this point are always great. Whenever there's a define question, if a student doesn't really nail the meaning of the term but gives a perfect example, I always give them the points. And that's true in my own classroom and with the AP Human Geography grading. Describe. If you see a question starting with the word describe, we're expecting 3 to 4 sentences, so these ones are getting a little bit longer here. You got to provide a depiction of the phenomenon or characteristic, whatever it is we're asking you to describe. So describe the culture of the United States of America. The culture of the United States of America is materialism, rooted in Christianity, rooted in European ancestry, but with an openness to immigrants and new cultures. So you really got to move on, move on, move on. And examples definitely help with describe too. Then the fourth term you'll see is explain. Whenever you see the word explain, I'm looking for a full paragraph. You got to elaborate on the relationship or the processes that are being used in whatever it is you're explaining. The word because must appear in your answer when you see the word explain. So an example in human geography could be explain why Japan has such a low birth rate. Well, you would start with Japan has such a low birth rate because the Japanese people have a culture that values economic achievement and job achievement more than family achievement. Something deep like that. And then fully explain it, bring in some more evidence in there. And then the last and probably most complicated STEM question is compare. Compare, you need 2 paragraphs. You got to describe the similarities and the differences between the 2 concepts. And make sure you don't forget that, similarities and differences. A lot of times kids will just say multiple ways 2 things are the same, but I also want to know how things are different. So a human geography question could be compare the religions of India with Thailand. And you would say, well, in India and Thailand, they have different religious beliefs, but they are the same in that they both worship, or they both have places of worship, they both have holidays, they both have sort of styles of praying, styles of showing their belief in their higher power, but they are different in that Thai Buddhists believe in Buddha and the person who achieved enlightenment and attained sort of a higher power, while Hindus believe in 1,000 different gods all over India. And yeah, so you would have the similarities and the differences in there. All right, cool. That was skill number 2. All right, skill number 3. Assume your reader knows nothing about geography and define each word as you write it. Yes, this is really important, okay? You gotta, when I read an essay, I pretend to sort of blank out my mind and I imagine that I'm just totally clueless, that I know nothing about planet Earth, even though I really know a lot. And yeah, countless times readers complain that the student introduced the idea, did not elaborate effectively. Do not assume we know. And the way that you can sort of double check yourself on this is after you write, try to read your writing and put yourself in this frame of reference. Like, if a 10-year-old kid read this, would this kid have an idea of whatever it is I'm talking about? So, 2 years ago, I graded this FRQ that was about culture in Spain. And so many kids expected that I knew everything about Spanish culture. And hey, I know a lot. Spain's a pretty great country. But I wasn't allowed to give them points because they did not effectively explain all the different cultural groups in Spain. They did not effectively explain what those differences of those groups are. The kids just wrote, yeah, there's a couple different groups in Spain, they're different. Well, I don't know how they're different. You need to explain that to me. So, deep dive. Tell them everything. Okay? Yeah, and this is the reality when you grade essays. It's pretty bad. Okay, so skill number 4. This is a huge one that I would take to my grave. Writing more is inevitably better than writing less. At the reading, if a student, if the question says please student use 1 example, in the event that the student writes 2 examples and the first example is kind of bad, but the second example is perfect, we are to give them the points because they got that second example 100% right. So that's pretty cool. And we, as the reader as well, we're supposed to read everything you write, unless if you're truly going on a rant that's totally off topic. Interesting fact too, you technically have unlimited paper to write these FRQs. You're usually going to be limited by time, but you're given 8 pages in the physical test, but every single FRQ I've ever graded in my life has never used more than 4 pages. So you will always have enough paper. You'll always have, I wish I could say you have enough time, but you don't. But yeah, write as much as you can. Just brain dump everything you know. If it asks for one example, write 3 examples. But yes, when an FRQ does start, the time crunch is the most serious thing. So use that time, write the entire time, write everything you know about the topic. Okay, so yeah, here's some actual examples of FRQs. So you see this kid, he wrote about half a page for a full FRQ. This kid wrote 1 paragraph for an FRQ. And then you see these kids, they're writing a whole lot more. So these FRQs, I can just tell by physically looking at them, are most likely going to have double or triple the points. Like this guy, you can't have a full FRQ in, how many words is this? I'm going to count this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's like 48 words. And then these FRQs are, 200 words plus. You're going to have way more content in there. I will find the points in there. All right. And then skill number 5. This is one I just added today. Start with the obvious, then be brilliant. Okay? And this was a big thing I saw in the 2020 AP test, the one I just graded this summer. There was an FRQ. The first part of it was, describe what the lady in the picture is doing. Okay, and these weren't the actual pictures on the AP test, but they were pretty similar to this. So clearly, the people in the picture are farming potatoes. But one of my students responded with, the lady in the picture is practicing subsistence-based agriculture. And now, that is true. Okay, like this kind of farming is called subsistence-based agriculture. But I was only allowed to give points for when the kids specifically talked about potatoes in some way. Okay? Be obvious first. Describe what the lady is doing. The lady is farming potatoes, which is a kind of subsistence-based agriculture. High five, kid, you would have got the points. But because you left out the basic knowledge, the basic facts, I wasn't allowed to give any points. So that's what it comes down to. Some kids ended up getting terrible scores on the FRQ, and I knew in my soul that the kid knew human geography stuff. They knew what was presented in the FRQ, but they just went so far over everyone's heads that they didn't give the basic, easy information. They just always shot for the moon. So start easy, then get crazy with it, okay? That's my advice for skill number 5. So if it asks you, what are they doing in the picture? Say what they're doing in the picture. Don't bring in all the fancy vocabulary and other stuff if you don't have to. I mean, I generally do encourage you to bring in the fancy vocabulary. Just do it after you get basic. All right? There we go. Farming potatoes. That's what they're doing in the picture. Okay, skill number 6. Make sure you space out your answers. Give some space between each section. And skip lines, okay? You have unlimited paper, so why not skip lines to give you the chance to sort of go back in and edit, maybe if you have a couple minutes left over. Also, I've seen so many papers, like things are crossed off and like kids have to write on the margins. But if you just double space every line, then you can really easily fit all the writing in there. Yeah, so you have unlimited paper. Use that paper and skip lines. I love it, love it, love it when you do that. So yeah, this kid probably should have skipped lines. Like you can see right here, they edited out one word right here. If they skipped lines, they could very easily fill it in and make it a lot easier for a grader like me to read what they were talking about. All right, skill 7, proofread yourself. Make sure you didn't write something wrong. This is something else that I saw a lot this year here in 2020. One of my students who I was really rooting for on the AP test, this kid, I think the question was like, compare these 2 cities. And clearly one of the cities was in India, one of the cities was in Great Britain. But the kid talked about comparing 2 cities in Great Britain and never mentioned India. And maybe in their head they were thinking about India, but they never wrote it, okay? They never physically wrote it down. So if this kid had double checked themselves, if this kid had sort of read it over in their own head, maybe they could have caught that. Another thing I really have to say is pay special attention to your pronouns. Every year, I always give terrible scores to kids that just use pronouns like crazy. Pronouns are a bad idea on the AP test. And if you don't remember what pronouns are, they're it, he, she. They're words used to refer to something you mentioned earlier. And a terrible problem that I've noticed a lot of teenagers have is they'll write using pronouns without ever mentioning the thing they're talking about in the first place. So, like, I think I have seen a FRQ that went something like this. That country is a great country. That country has a high birth rate. I'm like, well, which country is that country? Obviously, well, the question asked about a country in Asia, but they never mentioned a specific country. So what am I supposed to do? Don't use the words that. Don't use it. Don't use he or she. Just say the country again and again and again. All right, so here's an example where this can get really messy. The USA is a great country. It is a lot better than Somalia. It has an effective government and a high-level economy. So reading those two sentences, which country has an effective government and a high-level economy? Because if you were using like true English grammar structures, following this would say Somalia has an effective government and a high-level economy. But in reality, America's the one with a high-level economy. You can't say an effective government anymore. Okay, here's another example of pronouns gone wrong. Carl Sauer and Colin Renfrew are both human geographers. He thinks that Bolivia and Peru are very different countries. It has many problems like drugs and violence. To solve that problem, the government should improve education and law enforcement. That policy will be great for men and women. Yeah, so this whole paragraph is just a pronoun mess. We don't know which person or which country or which topic or which problem are being flowed through the logical thinking there. So don't use pronouns, restate the words. Okay? The country should make more babies. Wow, I remember seeing that one too. That's funny. Oh, memories. Okay. Skill 8. Answer each part of the FRQ question separately. Put a 1, 2, 3 or an ABC on the left margin. I'll zoom in on some examples of this so you can see. But that really helps me as a grader if I can actually see each part of your question, because sometimes things get a little jumbled up, and that's just rude. What's great is if you finish writing parts A through G and then you realize you need more space to part D, but you ran out of space, you can sort of just draw an arrow at the end of your answer or just write part D again at the end of your answer. Like, I have seen that on the actual AP test where a kid will go A, B, C, D, E, D. So they sort of have double D's in there, and the first D is packed with information, and then they just added a little more D at the end, and that's totally fine. All right, so bam, that's what I want to see. A, B, C, D, A, B, and then, yeah, great. Do it like that. Okay, skill number 9. Know that they've designed the test to have 3 essay questions. 1 essay's easy, 1's medium, and 1's hard. Always, always, always attempt every question. I once had a pretty long conversation with another AP Human Geo teacher who taught kids to ignore the hard essay. And this was a kind of an interesting strategy. The teacher just said, I tell my kids to just focus 100% of their time on the first 2 essays, make them as amazing as possible, and then ignore the third. But if you do that, there's no way you'll get a 5 on the AP test. So I do not advocate for that strategy. I advocate for you attempting all 3 and hopefully succeeding at all 3. And you'll always get more points if you wrote 1 word than if you wrote nothing. There actually is, as an AP grader, a special sort of grading category for the kid left it blank. And even if the kid wrote 1 word, then I have to give them a minimum value of points. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, skill number 10. You must use blue or black ink on the test. Don't use pencils. Pencils are bad. And yeah, why do we hate pencils so much? I don't have a good answer, and maybe it's because pens are much more. Huh. You know what? I actually don't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer for this, but yeah, you got to use pens. If you use pencil, we're supposed to throw it out. So get used to writing in pen, kids, because that's the way of the future, I guess. All right, skill 11. In FRQ writing, graders like myself always get excited when we see the words "for example." I've already mentioned this a little earlier in some of my other skills, but when you use examples, it just is always a way of getting more points. It's always hedging your bets. And yeah, like what I think you should do, this is my official advice, is answer all the questions of the FRQ normally. And then if you have extra time, go back to the parts of the FRQ that you want to add more content to and just add examples. Add 3 examples, add 4 examples. Just write everything you know about the topic at hand, and I hope that the points exist in there for you. But examples are the way to do it. So yeah, for example. Oh, so amazing. Oh, for example. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love this term. Use this term all the time. For example. Okay, skill number 12. Readers also love to see special connections with like geography terminology. So adjacent, near, connected, diffusion, globalization. These are some of these fancier geography terms. But if you have spatial concepts in your answer, that's also just another high-fiveable thing that just makes me want to just throw more points your way. So use location words, all right? This is what we've got to do. Location words in action. That's perfect. In, on, next to, between, behind, adjacent. Oh, I love all those words. Okay, I think this one's yes. Let's use the word adjacent to describe this homeless man. Will work for food, and then right behind him is a now hiring sign. So I mean, I feel like he is adjacent to the solution to his problem. Okay, so if this is a live class, I'd have you all use some terminology. This is another excellent one here. So liquor is adjacent to divorce, and divorce is adjacent to bankruptcy. I think this is also an amazing way to use adjacent terminology. And then location, Planned Parenthood, girls' night out. Oh no, problems. Okay, so skill 13. Be confident in your answer. I prefer you to be confident and wrong rather than unsure and right. Like, oh my goodness, so many times kids will write, maybe China is the country that is doing this thing. And it's like, well, if you wrote the word maybe, I immediately have to give it to you as a wrong answer. Like, you have to say with certainty something about geography. On the real AP test, we have to assume that you have taken a college level course, that you're a educated expert on these geography concepts. And if your writing makes it appear that you're uncertain, you're unsure, I don't know, well then we're definitely going to give you a 0. Once again, 2 years ago, it was about this Spain FRQ. I read this FRQ and the kid was right, but he wrote, maybe the Basques are promoting devolution in Spain. And because that was, the word maybe was in there, I had to give him a 0. But if the kid just wrote confidently, the Basques are promoting devolution in Spain, then boom, the kid would have got points and probably passed the test. So definitely be sure of yourself. And actually, there's some other funny FRQs I've read where like a kid was just so certain. He was like, America and Iran have the best relationship in the UN right now. And I was like, oh no, this kid knows nothing. But a part of me wanted to respect the kid more for just confidently being wrong. Typically that's not the case, but if you express even a minor amount of unconfidence, of uncertainty, your score will be a 0. So bad news, Bears. All right, so here's some other little tips for you guys, aside from my main skills. The lead test designer of AP Human Geo writes a rubric that graders must follow. We're double checked throughout the entire process, so it's not just one person grading you. The rubrics are also very rigid, though, and I think this is what killed so many of my students on the 2020 exam we just took. So, for example, the question is, what country has the capital city of Washington, D.C.? If a kid wrote, the country with the capital of Washington, D.C. is America, the kid would be wrong. America is not a country. The United States of America is a country. So you got to follow these really hard rubrics, and you just got to be very careful about, because when we're grading the actual AP test, I have to say, is this kid an expert at geography? Is there anything potentially wrong with what the kid wrote? So we are going to kind of hyper analyze what you write. All right. So yes, America is all that. The United States is just a part of that. Okay, and then here's some more insider information. So every year the College Board hires 2,000 people to grade AP FRQs. I've been one of those guys for the last 2 years. Experienced high school teachers or college professors grade like 300 essays a day. Gets really boring. There were times when I think like kids wrote me as the grader like little personal messages like, please give me a score, like, how's Cincinnati right now? And I was like, whoa, they know what I am. It was a little weird. But it does wear on my mind, but I gotta try my best to stay in focus and in sync with grading to the same rubric and treating every essay the same. So here's some more information for you, y'all. So if you don't know what to write for a question, these are some tips of sort of how to think, how to make an answer happen. So the first strategy system is 4-level analysis: where, when, scale. And then also skill number 5, first be obvious, then be brilliant. Pattern identification, why there, how did it get there, a prediction, what if, impacts. So all that stuff is great. Try to use that if you don't know what to do with a FRQ question. And then another sort of strategy you can follow to sort of analyze AP Human stuff is follow ESPN-DC, economic, social, political, environmental, demographic, cultural. If we ask you, describe what's going on in a country, these are all the different ways you can think about it. Hopefully, by the end of this course, ESPN-DC for at least 20 countries on planet Earth. And talk to me at the end of the course if you don't have 20 countries you can explain all this stuff for. This is something else I know. The head reader loves to connect content from multiple units. And almost every FRQ ends up being like this, where it's sort of like the culture of urban environments or the agriculture of the global commodity supply chain. So it all will flow together and connect multiple units of materials across this entire course. Also, all test content is at least 2 years old. I don't imagine that 2021 will be a coronavirus FRQ. That would be really crazy if it was. But so at least 2 years old. Okay, so this is terrible handwriting. Let me also mention this too. If your handwriting really, 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 really sucks, we do have the ability to just give your FRQ a 0 and move on. But if you are concerned about that, definitely talk to me or who else. And we do try our best to read it. And I remember actually at the Cincinnati grading, they had me read some terrible handwriting a couple times. Oh, God, it's so bad. All right, and that's it for me. So hope you all learned something. Peace out.